For those of you that don't know, my name is Adam Beckman, and I'm the youth pastor here. And what's crazy is as I was driving up here, I thought I am heading into my 6th school year as youth pastor at Journey, which is mind-blowing that it's already been 6 years. And if I must confess something, this past school year was the first school year where I truly found out that I am not as cool or young as I thought I was. You know, all 5 years before this, I was like, oh, I understand the students. I know what's cool. I know what's funny. But this school year, there was times where I had an idea or I said something like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so cool. It's going to be so funny. And then they just stare at me. And so I'm getting older, but I love that I get to be the youth pastor here. And one thing that's obvious is every generation is so different. Who's excited for Thanksgiving and Christmas? 3 or 4 generations gathering around the table, all of us agreeing about everything politically in the church, with school. It's a beautiful place where peace and harmony exist among 3 or 4 generations. That's completely wrong. And so I know we got some boomers, we have Gen X. I'm a millennial, and so I am the entitled generation, but we're also the generation responsible for avocado toast, so you're welcome. And I was born in 93, so I'm a millennial, but there's now a new generation, and they are called Gen Z. And so this morning, I want to open God's Word and spend some time considering how can we, no matter what generation we are, influence kids and students to come to know and love Jesus. And so let me introduce Gen Z to you really quickly. So they have the cutoff around 1997, 1999 for the beginning of Gen Z. So from then until now, so the oldest Gen Zs are about college age kids. There's around 70 million of them, and about half of them are non-white. They are the most diverse generation we have had yet. And this is amazing, only 34% believe lying is morally wrong. And if that wasn't bad enough, they are twice as likely as adults to say they are atheists. 7 out of 10 believe it is acceptable to be born one gender and feel like another. The stats and the research, and when you watch TV and when you go on social media, it is obvious that this generation is post-Christian. No longer is the church and its values and its principles central. Those days are long gone. And so, how do we understand this? How do we understand this? And more importantly, what are we going to do about it? What if the state of this generation's faith is not a result of poor communication, but what if it's actually the result of really excellent communication? Maybe we have communicated really well something we didn't intend to. And these kids in this generation is just believing and accepting and holding on to what we are telling and showing them. And so what I want to focus on this morning is how do we influence them both with our words and with our life in a way that might change their lives forever. And so as a youth pastor, I couldn't help but to have a visual learning experience for y'all this morning. So I'm going to head over there. So if you were to ask this generation, or more importantly, anyone, even outside the church, hey, what do we as followers of Jesus believe? Or if you asked non-believers, hey, what do Christians believe? I'm willing to bet a lot of my money, 9 times out of 10, you would get something along the lines of this story. So they would say, okay, well, you Christians, you mom and dad, you believe that there is this place called Earth, and this place is both beautiful, there's great things, but this place is also full of difficulty and tragedy. So it's a mixed bag. But here's me on Earth, and my life is like this. And you Christians believe that you live your life, and we as humans are mixed bag. We're not perfect. Sometimes we have good days, some days we have bad days. The goal is to stay on this side of the line, to be a good person, and to avoid this side of the line. And at the end of the day, your life ends, And you either get assigned by God to go to heaven or hell. And if you ask them, how do you get assigned into heaven and how do you get assigned into hell, they would say something along the lines of, well, if you were on the good side, more on the bad side, then God assigns you into heaven. But if you're not, you go to hell. And some of you might be thinking, that's what I believe. And if you do, I love you, and I care about you, and I care about the state of this generation's faith, and I care about your faith, but this is wrong. And the problem is we have accepted this as true because this story has half-truths and quarter truths. Like, partially it's true. Like, yes, God created earth, and yes, God does want us to do good and to be an influence in the world, and yes, there is a heaven and hell, so there's partial truths, but this is wrong. This is wrong. And how I know this is wrong is because when I read Scripture, this is nowhere to be found. And more than Scripture, when you look at the life and teaching of Jesus, he never says this. He never does this. And so I want to jump real quickly to the Gospel of Mark. Many scholars believe that this was the first gospel written, if you go through the timeline. And so Jesus' first words, I have red letter Bible, so these are the first red letters in the Gospel of Mark. This is what he says. After John was put in prison, Jesus went into Galilee proclaiming the good news of God. And here we go. What is the good news? The time has come. The kingdom of God has come near. Repent and believe the good news. Okay, so Jesus, his own words say, okay, the time has come. Believe the good news. Okay, well, what's the good news? Well, the good news is that something has come near. Well, what has come near? The kingdom of God. You see, the story that we believe is not us trying to go somewhere. It's about God coming here. And the problem is, if we believe this story, the way we live the story and teach the story to our kids is the way we follow Jesus, and the way we live as Jesus followers according to this story is we want to be good people. We're going to be nice, we're going to read our Bible, we're going to go to church, and we're often going to hold certain beliefs so that way God is happy with us, and one day we cross our fingers and hope that we were good enough to get into heaven, and that is wrong. And it is no wonder this generation doesn't believe the story. This is not a compelling story. Who wants to be a part of that story? That story is me-centered. But the good news that we believe and the good news that we must pass on to this next generation is not about us going somewhere. It's about God coming here. Thank you for the one amen. We should have had a lot more than that. I'm going to give you a lot more opportunities too. We're just getting started. And so when we read the Bible, this becomes evident that this story is wrong, and the story is that God has come here. And that is the good news. If you read the Gospel of John, wow, you get hit in the face with this all over the place. The very first verse in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jump down to verse 14. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Later in John chapter 10, I have come, Jesus said, so that you may have life and life to the full. Later on, he says, and this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. And then later, as if this didn't convince you, Jesus died on the cross, rose from the dead. He's hanging out with his boys again. He said, hey, I'm about to leave. And he looks them in the eyes and says, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. And so the model that we have as followers of Jesus when it comes to influencing the next generation, passing off our faith, is not having our kids hope and wait for the day that they go to heaven, but we get to tell them the kingdom of God is now. His presence is here, and you now don't get to sit on your hands and wait to go participate in heaven. You get to participate now. And not only do you get to participate now, the presence and power of God is in you, the light of the world is in you, and you get to shine the light of the world out so that before you die and go to heaven, you may show and let everyone come to know Jesus in your life. And so if this verse is the perfect way to transition to the next point, not only are we to influence this next generation with our words and the story that we tell and the beliefs that we instill in them, but we also need to do a good job with our lives and the way that we communicate with our lives. And this is where I want to turn our attention to the 2 Timothy passage. We've been in a series called Tell Me Something Good. We're spending time in Paul's letters where he always includes a section at the beginning of his letters where he thanks the recipient of the letter or the church that he's visiting, and I'm going to focus on 2 Timothy. Timothy is a young guy, kind of like me. He's probably 27 years old, probably not as good looking, not as smart, but he was a leader of an early church, and Paul would write letters to him because Paul, as we know, was instrumental in getting the church started. He would start a church, build up leadership, and he'd say, peace out, and then he would write to them and check in on them. And so this is Timothy. Timothy was his protege. He was like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3. I thank God whom I serve, as my forefathers did with a clear conscience. As night and day, I constantly remember you in my prayers. Recalling your tears, I long to see you, so that I may be filled with joy. I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Louise and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. So in this one passage, we have Timothy, who has been influenced and shaped by his grandmother and mother, his family. But we also know because of Paul, he's also influenced by a non-family member. And so before we get to the non-family member, I want to camp out and what does it look like for us as families, as moms, dads, aunts, uncles? What does it look like as family members to influence and to grow the faith of our kids? The research shows the single greatest influence in the life of a kid is their parents. And that's not just religion and spiritual stuff, that's like everything. The greatest influence in a kid's life is their parents. And so the question isn't if God is being worshiped in your home. The question is which God is being worshiped in your home. Maybe another way to phrase this to help it sink in a little bit deeper, the question is not if your house is worshiping. The question is, what is your house worshiping? Something in every house, unbeliever or believer, there's something central in the home that gets attention, that gets worship, that gets adoration, that fuels the home and everything it does. And so for some homes, it may not be God, big G God, it may be the God of sports. What is central in our home, what is worshiped in our home is sports. It may be school. Grades are God in our house, and the way we let our kids know is if you want to make God happy or if you want to be good, make good grades. Maybe in some houses, it's November's coming up. What it means is this is the political party we rally around, and this is the God of our home, and if it happens, then God will be happy. And so the question isn't not if you're worshiping and if you're influencing the home. The question is, how are you? So do you feel the pressure? Do you feel the weight as a parent? Well, I have some comfort for you if you feel overwhelmed. The good news is that this text does not say that as family members and parents and grandmothers, we are to pass down and show them a perfect faith. It says, I am reminded of your sincere faith. It does not say, I'm reminded of your perfect faith, grandma and mom, and that's why I am leading this church as Timothy. No, it says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith. Can I tell you a secret? This next generation has a really good BS meter. They pick up on things, and they see through the lies. They see through the veil that you put up. They know if you're faking it or not. And they want nothing to do with it. And I am not surprised to see the stats of the church in the next generation declining because they look at us and they see a bunch of hypocrites. And this word sincere, if you look in the Greek, I'm going to flex because I'm so smart, and WG would be really proud of me. The word sincere in Greek literally is translated as without hypocrisy, genuine. And so this is good news because the text doesn't say perfect faith. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever you are, if you're a family member with kids in your life, you are to show them a sincere faith. And what this looks like is how powerful 3 words are in the life of a kid. I am sorry. Could you imagine the life and faith of our kids if parents and grandparents would humble themselves and go to their kid and say, I'm sorry, I really messed that up. I know I tell you to do this and then I do the opposite thing, and I struggle with this too. Like, think about the lives that would change if we didn't try to present a perfect picture of our faith to our kids. And they don't want it. They want us to see a real, authentic, genuine, without hypocrisy faith. The National Study of Youth and Religion's conclusion says that the best way for youth to become more serious about religious faith is for parents to become more serious about theirs. They go on to say, teenagers' ability to imitate Christ depends to a daunting degree on whether we do. Parents, grandparents, family members, you have an incredible responsibility. You have influence, whether you know it or not, and you are molding and shaping them, whether you intend to or not. The question is, what are you teaching them to worship? What are you teaching them to believe? May we be a church, may we be a family that instills a sincere, real, honest, even full of mess-ups and bad days, real faith. That is an opportunity. Here's the deal. This is a side tangent. When we mess up, we have an opportunity for the 18 years before they leave us to instill in them. When mom and dad mess up, they are watching and learning. Do mom and dad run away from God when they mess up, or do they run to God when they mess up? And you have an opportunity in 18 years before they leave your house to instill a rhythm and a discipline. When we mess up as a family, we do not run away from God. We run to God because we know our God is good and full of grace and mercy, and he loves us so much that he's not going to leave us there. He's going to grow us and call us into deeper life. And so now I want to ask a question. That's great. And I can look at this church, and we have amazing parents. Like, I love that I get to work with a youth group with amazing parents that instill a sincere faith in their kids. But what about the kids at this church and the kids in this city that don't have parents that follow Jesus? What about them? Well, there's hope and good news for them, because there is a responsibility from us to influence and to shape kids that are not related to us. Like, your kids' friends, their teammates, their band members, their playmates, whatever you want to call them, we have responsibility not to do this with our kids, but with other people's kids. And so notice how Timothy, he was lucky. He had both family members that instilled this in him, but he also had a Paul in his life, a non-family member that looked at him, saw him, and said, I see you, I love you, and I'm going to pour my life into you. I'm going to reveal to you and teach you a sincere faith that you're going to pass off to others. And this is how my life was. My parents raised me in a Christian home. We went to church, but we never really had Bible study. We never prayed. My senior year, when I was like, hey, I think I want to do ministry and go to Baylor, they're like, whoa, our kid? Because they didn't feel like they were competent and knowledgeable enough to disciple, to pass off, to teach me about God. But even though I didn't have that in my home, outside my home, non-family members, I can tell you story after story of men that have come into my life, saw me where I was, how I was, and grew me and showed me a sincere faith. I can tell you about Thomas Flippin. I can tell you about Reagan. I can tell you about Toph Wisnet at UBC. I can tell you about Jeff Bradburn. I can tell you about Landon Collard, and on and on and on. Like, in high school, I grew up in church. I knew the right answers. I had no relationship. And I believed this story. And so the way I operated was, I'm going to be a good kid and make God happy. I went to a Young Life camp after my freshman year of high school, and for the first time, I was like, oh, Jesus wants a relationship with me? I'm all in. This is amazing. And so I get back home, and my Young Life leader says, hey, I'll pick you up Sunday. We're going to church. I was like, okay. And so he picked me up. We went to church, and I was like, oh, so there's no priests and robes, and there's no big choir. It was like a Baptist church, and it was like really trendy and contemporary and cool. And I was like, this is great. And he said, hey, I'll pick you up Tuesday and we'll go play Frisbee golf after school. And he did this over and over again. He constantly put himself in my life. And I knew the reason he did it wasn't because I was cool, because I was not cool. He did it because he loved Jesus, and he believed that Jesus loved me so much that he wouldn't wait for me to go to God, but he was going to show me who God was and come to me how I was. And while my parents didn't really do this for me, I saw my home be a place where my friends and my brother's friends wanted to be at. And so maybe you're a parent in this room and you have kids, and how amazing would it be for you to walk out this door and say, this school year, I want to create a home where my kids and their friends want to be at. I want to make it a safe place. I want to make it a place where they come and hang out, and I'm going to use that time to peek in and hang out with them, or in the car rides when I pick them up or drop them off. I'm going to intentionally use that time not just to pour into my kids, but their friends. And it is amazing how my parents did this. My parents said that our grocery bill would quadruple in the summer times because our house was the hangout house. And there would be like 6 boys, and we would go through all the food. And my mom said I would spend whatever it takes if our house was going to be that place. And it was really cool because by senior year, friends would come over. They'd just walk through the back door without knocking or asking. And it got to the place where we wouldn't like go upstairs and avoid my parents. We would just hang out, and my parents would be there, and they would be there with us. And to see how in college, on Thanksgiving and Christmas break, we would come together and we'd all gather back up in our hometown, and we would come to our house, and it was awesome to see my friends walk through the door and give my mom and dad a big hug and say, Mr. Dean, Trish, how are you? Missed you so much. And now that we're like adults, it's like when we get together, we can have wine with them and hang out, and it's like we're just friends. And at Beck and I's wedding, to see during the rehearsal dinner at the wedding, like my friends just hanging out with my dad. And I'm like, hey, it's my day. You can hang out with me. But it is amazing because my friends found my home because of the way my parents operated our house to be a safe and inviting place. And I'm willing to bet you that if you were to ask my friends, they would not be able to tell their story without mentioning Dean and Trish Beckman. Journey. Could you imagine not just your kids' lives, but their friends' lives in the 6 years you have in middle school and high school, and even more, to influence not just your kids, but their friends? And so as we end, I just want to encourage you. You are influencing this next generation. And we have the opportunity in both words and with our life to communicate that we do not have to wait to go to God, but God has come to us. Everything Jesus did was relational. May we be a people who influence and model the next generation with the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. And may we watch this church in this city explode with new believers, with young kids that know how good God is and how great it is to have family and friends that love the Lord. And so before we pray, I want to invite you for our thank you notes. We've been doing this every week. If you haven't been with us, at the end of every sermon, we always encourage you to write a note, and we have notes on the back table. You can also do this like over text or go do it in person. But I want to give you 2 encouragements. I want you to write a note to someone who has had an influence in your life when you were a student. Some of you have to think back way long ago, so you might need a little bit to think back on those times, but I want you to take a moment this week to write a note to someone thanking them for the way that they influenced you when you were a student. And if you want to get extra credit, parents, I want you to also write a second note to someone who has been doing this in your kid's life. Write a note to a friend or mentor who has seen your kid and viewed it their mission to influence them and to encourage your kid. And so you could do that with the paper. You can do that by emailing us, thankyou@journeycs.org.